So on today's episode for Bitcoinomics, we have a very special guest, Rob Wallace here from Bitcoin News, and a little bit about his background. He's the co-founder of Bitcoin News, which is a Bitcoin-first media platform dedicated to promoting hyper-Bitcoinization by providing the latest trends, developments, and opportunities in the Bitcoin space. So a little bit more about Rob. He dove into Bitcoin around 2020, and in 2023, he committed fully to leveraging his production skills to advocate for the financial revolution. Believing that Bitcoin's adoption is a derivative of education, he wakes up daily aiming to spread the orange pill across the globe. So he started his career in Shanghai, where he launched his own PR and events company, and then he moved to New York, where he worked as a producer, creating engaging content for clients like Spotify, Pizza Hut, and Johnson & Johnson. He combines his production and creative skills with his knowledge of international relations, which he studied at Tufts University, and his main goal is to help accelerate the adoption of Bitcoin by educating and inspiring audiences through compelling storytelling. So, Rob, just want to say thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So kind of just jumping right into it, you've had a pretty fascinating journey so far. I mean, from Shanghai to New York, from traditional media to Bitcoin. I mean, what was really the turning point for you as far as to diving headfirst into Bitcoin in 2020?
Hello, thank you for having me. Yes, if I look back at my Bitcoin journey, I would have to trace it all the way back to 2008, 2009. The financial crisis. I was in college. I was at Tufts studying international relations and Chinese at the time, thinking that I wanted to work for the government, be a diplomat, something of that regard. So yeah, I was pretty much bought into the system and thought that America was pretty cool and all the things that we did. But then I came home one day, I think it might have been from economics class, and turned on the TV and I saw Hank Paulson, the Secretary of Treasury of the time, come on and say, "Hey, we need to give these banks basically $1 trillion, or else we're going to have martial law and there's going to be tanks on the streets." And I was just taken aback. I'm like, what? I mean, these bankers screwed up so horribly with our money that they were in charge of, that we have to give them even more of our money in order to save them. And that makes absolutely zero sense. So it really didn't pass the smell test for me, and that sent me down the rabbit hole. I started looking into Austrian economics. Ron Paul was a big political figure at the time. Of course, Occupy Wall Street was later to go on, of course. And so there was just this general movement of we don't trust this system anymore and these lies that we were handed to since birth, right? I mean, the whole entire fiat economic system that we are born into, it is a Ponzi scheme. Right? There's always going to be more debt than there is actual money to pay it all back. And so that essentially makes us all in some form a slave to the system, right? And that being the case, I realized, wow, I do not want to be a part of it. So, I mean, I had this sort of revelation back then in 2009, right when Bitcoin was being born. And so I wasn't technical enough to be on the cypherpunk mailing list or be in the cryptography circles to really get into Bitcoin in the early days. But I had all the philosophical and fundamental underpinnings that would eventually lead me there years later. Yeah, I mean, throughout the 2010s. So after Tufts, I went to China because I studied Chinese and I fell in love with the country, the opportunity. Being a young guy in my early 20s in China offered me a whole lot more than being a young guy in my 20s in New York City. Really, the doors were wide open. You could do whatever you wanted. This was before Xi Jinping, and so they were very friendly to Americans and foreigners, and there was sort of like a different set of rules. You could pretty much almost get away with anything that you wanted over there as long as you weren't doing anything too crazy. So, I mean, we were throwing parties, events. I had a band. I was writing for a magazine, started a YouTube channel, doing comedy videos. And yeah, it was like a playground for entrepreneurship and trying things out and being in this vibrant economy that was absolutely exploding at the time, right? I mean, this was after the Olympics there and during the World's Fair was happening in Shanghai in 2011. I mean, there was a lot of like really great energy in the place, and there's people from all over the world. And it was an amazing opportunity and a laboratory to experiment with entrepreneurship and try the things that I really loved, video making and playing music. Did that, and I was convinced at the time that, I mean, back in 2011, 2012, that we were about to experience hyperinflation, right? They printed all this money. QE was on full blast. The system was teetering on the very edge. I still remember silver hitting $50 an ounce back in April of 2011. And I mean, it just hit $50 an ounce for the first time since then, like a couple of weeks ago, right? So we did not have hyperinflation. That did not exactly happen, but all those same problems are still there. right? The system is set up to fail eventually. The debt is growing at an exponential rate. We're adding $1 trillion every 180 days or so to the national debt. And the same fundamental assumptions that I made back then hold true today. So now I'm back to America in the mid 2010s. Xi Jinping took over China. They were not as friendly to Americans as they were previously. And I went back to New York and took the things that I learned in China and put them there, working in advertising, marketing, video production. But I felt like sort of I was fundamentally proven wrong in my hyperinflation theory, and that somehow they had like papered it over, right? But I was still interested in these things. And in 2016, I bought my first Bitcoin. I went down to the financial district in New York, and there was a Bitcoin ATM at the Southside Ferry. And I said, hey, let's take a lottery on this thing, right? So I put in $1,000 and I was able to get 2.2 Bitcoin. Yeah, it was $420 a Bitcoin back in 2016.
You're seen as a madman then. I
Yeah,
mean,
but I mean, it was a random, just like a shot in the dark, right? I
yeah,
was like, I didn't
yeah,
know nearly as much about Bitcoin as I do now, and I thought it was an interesting technology. They had some of the same beliefs as I do, but I had no idea about the thing that made it different from all the other cryptocurrencies, and that the discovery of essentially digital scarcity and the 21 million cap, like all these things were just completely foreign to me at the time. But I thought, hey, this looks like a cool technology. Gold has not been performing well. I mean, gold was like $1 an ounce back in 2015, 2016. So I was like, let's take a shot on this. So I put essentially the equivalent of one gold coin into Bitcoin, and yeah, it turned into 2.2 BTC. See, the thing was, I got a printout from the ATM machine, right? And it was just a QR code, and that was the private keys. I had no idea about proper cold storage. I did not have a hardware wallet. All I had was this piece of paper. So I was traveling at the time, went to California back in 2017 and had a backpack on me. Took a little trip to Las Vegas, was waiting to go back to California into a slot machine, lost the money immediately in the slot machine, and I looked down and someone had stolen my.
no. So someone got away with your 2.2 Bitcoin.
Yes, someone got away with my 2.2 Bitcoin. And I highly doubt they even knew, if they even saw the
That's
piece,
true.
what it was.
That's true. Yeah.
I think they were much more interested probably in the laptop in the backpack than they were the little printout of paper, even though it was worth 20 to 40x more than that computer, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was 2017. And so that was right before like the parabolic run up. So Bitcoin's probably like $1,000 then. And then it ran up to 20,000. And then it had just been stolen from me. So my $1,000 investment turned into $40,000, but I had to watch it from the sidelines because it was no longer in my possession. Not your keys, not your coins. So, I mean, that taught me some lessons about Bitcoin and it being a bearer instrument. And if you don't have it, it's not yours. And that sort of, it soured me on it for a second. You know, it wasn't really, I was like, oh my God, this is too crazy. It's too risky. I don't want to be a part of it. And I guess I was just sour grapes about the fact that it owning it anymore. So I took some time off from Bitcoin, and yeah, then COVID came not too long after that. And I got that same gut feeling that I got back in 2008, 2009, that something is seriously wrong here, right? They were printing trillions of dollars, and from my time studying Austrian economics, I knew that for every dollar that they print, it means that they are robbing purchasing power from everyone.
Yep.
So I knew something had to be done, some drastic measure had to be made. And that's when I started looking back into Bitcoin, spent the thousands of hours reading, watching, listening, and became obsessed and tried to orange people as many people as possible during COVID. Was a big proponent of telling people, hey, if you got a stimulus check, put that into Bitcoin right now. You know, this was right before the 2020 halving. 2020 halving was in May. They sent out those stimulus checks in April. Bitcoin was around $7,000 then, you know, so you were able to get like 0.15 Bitcoin or whatever for that stimulus check, right? And so that's turned into $20,000 now, right? So it's pretty amazing what Bitcoin can do if you just wait. But yeah, 2020 was when I really got into Bitcoin, studied it super hard. I was working after that at Barstool Sports as a senior producer for a travel show, traveling around the country, making comedy travel videos. Really enjoyed it, a lot of fun, but I was just so obsessed with Bitcoin. I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to make this my job. And in 2023, at the beginning of it, January, I saw that this little outfit called Bitcoin News was looking for a video guy. I joined on, quickly became a co-founder. I had bought out Bitcoin News from him and was running it with that's how it all started.
Okay. So very, very long journey. I mean, like obviously starting from like Shanghai and then going and then doing your thing over there. And it's like interesting you mentioned that because it's funny how you left New York City and decided to go to China, decided to go to Shanghai, China, and that was like your playground for your 20s. And you don't really hear that very commonly here. Because as like we're all Americans, it's like, all right, like we're just gonna go to some big city, but to hear that someone no China, I'm gonna go to somewhere international and try my luck there. And it seems like it taught you a lot because then eventually you came back here, and then I mean you put all those skills to trade here. So tell me this one thing. I'm just curious as far as those 2.2 Bitcoin gone right. Hey, so the guy or girl, whoever took it, like you did rob dirty if you're watching this for some reason. But then when did you buy it again? Because obviously you took a little break and then you got back to it in 2020. Now, did you buy it again in 2020, or when was the next buy option for you?
Yeah, so it was that spring before the halving. So yeah, like right when COVID happened, like in March, we were all locked in. I was just watching YouTube and reading books, and by April, I just started throwing as much money as possible into Bitcoin. So that was April 2020 is when I really got it.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. And then take me through as far as I want to learn and understand your journey more about from going from Shanghai to China or going from Northeast to Shanghai, then back. Like, what did you learn, like going over there? What were the biggest things you learned and maybe the differences, at least at the time, maybe before Xi Jinping came in? How's the culture, the business? Obviously, you talked about they're more accepting and whatnot. Like, take us a little bit more through that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is hard for us as Americans to realize is that like the world outside of America, or at least outside of the West, like it's so much more of a hustle, right? I mean, people are just trying to make a buck. It doesn't matter what it is, you're just willing to go out there, throw some water bottles in a bag and sell them on the street, you know? Like any way you can make money is totally acceptable, and it's cool, you know, as long as you're able to survive, provide for your family, and wake up the next day and do it all again. And that attitude, especially when you go to a city like Shanghai with like 20 million people, and there's like 60 cranes in the skyline at all times, and the city's going vertical straight up, and the energy, it's electric. Like we live here in America, and everything is really established, right? I mean, I'm outside of New York City. All the infrastructure is from 100 years ago. And so the subways are slow and the trains are breaking down and the air conditioning sometimes doesn't work in the train stations. So I think that we are at the tip of the spear here in America, but then you go to a country like China or all over Asia where these cities are being built up anew now. So all the infrastructure is brand new. The trains run on time. They're very clean, and there's just and electricity in the air, especially in the time that I was there again, 2010, Shanghai. And it just felt like that entrepreneurial spirit was infectious, you know, go out, try things. If you mess up, who cares? Like, it's not that expensive to live there compared to living in New York City. So it's much less of a burden to try to pay rent, and you can tutor some kids English to make sure that you pay your rent on time. But then you can go out and eat for $2 for dinner on the street and you're satiated and you're ready to go, right? I mean, it's especially being at that age, I feel like we have very few rites of passage here in America. Very few things that really, you go to college, right? You party, but then you're kicked out into the workforce and you're like, okay, now you're an adult and you got to be completely serious and you have to be sort of like live this robotic 9 to 5 lifestyle. Whereas no, it's really awesome to go out and try things and experiment, especially when you're that young and you have that energy and you can exist on 4 hours of sleep a night for an extended amount of time. So it was a really awesome experience to be there at the time. But as I was saying, it shifted when she came in, right? During the mid 2010, 2015, he came into power. Trump was president in 2016, end of 2016. And then the relationship between China and America got really rocky. It's been sort of rocky ever since. I mean, we're seeing it play out just right now with these trade negotiations and tariffs and everything. Yeah, I mean, it was very welcoming to Americans. And then there's a good anecdote to show you how it changed is a couple of years after I left. I mean, Shanghai is one of the premier like nightlife destinations in the world. And so you have all these amazing, beautiful clubs, amazing skyline views, whatnot. I had some friends who were partying there and the cops would just show up and then they would grab 10 random foreigners from the crowd, pull them outside, even clipping up their hair, tested for drugs. And if it was positive, you're getting kicked out the country.
Just like that.
Just like that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just one example of how the attitude shifted towards foreigners. And so I think it's opening up a little bit more again. I think you're seeing some Americans go back there now after COVID and whatnot. But for a while. Like a lot of the Europeans, Americans had left, and a lot more Russians started going to Shanghai and whatnot. It had definitely changed in the mid 2010s. Absolutely.
See, wow. So like massive transition there. So basically around there for the 2010s, and then you come back to the States and whatnot. You obviously had a great time there. Take me through, well, actually, one question I want to ask you, how big was Bitcoin at the time in China? Like, were people talking about it? Were they really exposed to it? Was it normalized, or what was the scene like then?
Wasn't that big a part of. I really didn't hear much about Bitcoin until I got back to America, which was around 2014. Well, I mean, I think 2013 is when Silk Road sort of blew up. And so that made the waves and Mt. Gox. But in terms of day to day life, no, we weren't really talking much about.
Gotcha. I mean, that makes sense. So that definitely tracks. And that wraps up another episode of Bitcoinomics. Like, comment, and subscribe, and join us next time.